I stared at the bank statement in my hands, the balance reading zero across all four accounts. My fingers didn't even tremble. I'd known this was coming. Ms. Chen, I'm very sorry, the bank manager said, his discomfort palpable. The power of attorney you granted was exercised yesterday afternoon. All funds were transferred before you revoked the document this morning. Yesterday afternoon? I repeated softly. Just hours before I came in. I'm afraid so. The withdrawal was completely legal at the time. There's nothing we can do now. I looked up at him and smiled. Actually smiled. Thank you for your time, Mr. Wang. You've been very helpful. He blinked, clearly confused by my reaction. He'd probably expected tears, rage, threats of lawsuits. Instead, I gathered my papers, tucked them into my purse, and walked out of that bank with my head high and my heart singing. Because Jessica, my dear, beloved younger sister, had just made the biggest mistake of her miserable life. She'd stolen exactly what I wanted her to steal. Let me take you back to where this really started. Not this morning when I revoked the power of attorney, not last week when I signed it under my family's pressure, but 6 months ago in another lifetime on the night I died. I remember the rain. It was one of those aggressive autumn storms that turns city streets into rivers and makes the windows rattle in their frames. I was in the hospital, had been for 3 weeks by then, lying in a bed that smelled like antiseptic and dying flowers, my body failing one system at a time. Liver cancer, stage 4. By the time they'd found it, there was nothing anyone could do but manage the pain and wait. I was 31 years old. My husband, David, sat in the chair by the window, scrolling through his phone. He'd been doing a lot of that lately, sitting there, not really present, his fingers dancing across the screen while I died by inches in front of him. David? My voice was barely a whisper. The morphine made everything feel distant and heavy. Hmm? He didn't look up. Can you call my parents? I'd like to see them. They were here this morning, Lily. That was yesterday. He finally glanced at me, annoyance flickering across his handsome face. Does it matter? You're going to see them again tomorrow. But I wouldn't. I could feel it, that certain knowledge that tonight was the night. The doctors had stopped pretending to be optimistic. The nurse who checked on me every hour had started looking at me with that particular sadness people reserve for the already gone. Please, I said. He sighed an exaggerated sound of inconvenience, but he made the call. They came, my parents, my sister Jessica, even my mother-in-law Patricia. All 5 of them crowded into that small hospital room, and I felt a moment of warmth, of gratitude that I wouldn't die alone. I should have known better. Lily, my mother said, her voice tight. There's something we need to discuss. I blinked, trying to focus through the drug haze. What is it? It's about your estate, Patricia said, moving closer to the bed. She was a tall woman, elegant even in casual clothes, with the kind of confidence that comes from old money and absolute certainty in one's own importance. David needs to be protected. Protected? I didn't understand. Your medical bills have been substantial, my father added. He stood by the door, couldn't even look at me directly. We need to ensure that David isn't saddled with debt after you're gone. After I'm gone. They said it so casually, like I wasn't lying right there, still breathing, still present. The life insurance will cover the bills, I managed to say. We took out a policy when... We need you to sign a power of attorney, Jessica interrupted. She'd moved to the foot of my bed, her pretty face arranged in an expression of concern that didn't reach her eyes. For me, just temporarily to help sort out the financial situation. Why you? The words came out slurred. David is grieving, Patricia said sharply. He can barely think straight. Jessica has offered to help manage things, to make sure all your affairs are in order. It's the least you can do, Lily. After everything this family has done for you. Everything they'd done for me. I wanted to laugh, but I couldn't catch enough breath. My parents had paid for my wedding and reminded me of it constantly. Patricia had given us the down payment for our apartment, and never let me forget who really owned it. Jessica had helped with my job search after I graduated by getting me a position at her company where she could supervise me, criticize me, and take credit for my work. Every kindness had been a chain. "I don't understand why this is necessary," I whispered. "Because we're your family," my mother said, and she actually had tears in her eyes. "We love you, Lily. We want to help, but you have to let us help. You have to sign the document." The nurse brought it in, a real legal document, already prepared, notary standing by. They'd planned this. They'd known they would come tonight and ask this of me when I was at my weakest, when I was dying, when I couldn't think clearly enough to question or resist. "I don't want to," I said. "Lily." David finally stood up from his chair. He came to the bedside, took my hand. His palm was warm and dry, and for just a moment, I let myself believe he was going to defend me, to tell them this was inappropriate, to be the husband I'd thought I married. "You're being selfish," he said instead. "Your family is trying to help, and you're making this difficult for everyone. Just sign it. It doesn't matter anyway. What do you need money for now?" What did I need money for now? I was dying after all. What use did a dying woman have for bank accounts and investments and the small inheritance my grandmother had left me? The morphine was strong, my mind was fog. And fragments. They were all there, all insisting, and I was so tired of fighting, of hurting, of trying to breathe through the pain. I signed it. My hand shaking, my signature barely legible, I gave my sister power of attorney over my estate. "Good girl," my mother said, kissing my forehead like I was 6 years old and had just cleaned my room. They left soon after. All of them, even David, who said he needed to go home and rest, that he'd be back in the morning. He wouldn't need to come back. I died at 3:47 a.m., alone, except for the night nurse who held my hand and told me it was okay to let go. But here's the thing about dying young, about dying betrayed and bitter and full of regrets. Sometimes the universe looks at you and says, "That wasn't fair. Let's try that again." I opened my eyes to sunshine streaming through familiar windows, to the sound of my mother's voice calling up the stairs that breakfast was ready, to the smell of coffee and jasmine from the plant on my nightstand. I sat up in a bed I recognized, my childhood bed in my parents' house. I looked down at my hands. Young hands, smooth hands, no ivy bruises or needle marks. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand. The date read April 15th, 6 years earlier. I was 25 again. I should have been terrified, confused, convinced I was dreaming or hallucinating. But instead, I felt a clarity I'd never experienced before. Every moment of those 6 years was sharp in my mind. My wedding to David, a marriage that had been comfortable but cold, built on my parents' approval more than our connection. My job at Jessica's company, where I'd worked 60-hour weeks while she took credit for my projects. Patricia's constant criticisms, her suggestions that I wasn't good enough for her son, her helpful advice about my weight, my clothes, my cooking. And that final night, the power of attorney, the casual cruelty of them asking me to sign away my assets while I lay dying. What happened after I died? I didn't know for certain, but I could guess. Jessica would have had complete access to everything, my bank accounts, my investments, the inheritance from my grandmother that I'd carefully saved and never touched. David would have gotten the insurance money, the apartment. They'd all have benefited from my death while I got a morphine drip in loneliness. I stood up, walked to the mirror. My face was young, my hair long, my body healthy and strong. This time, things would be different. This time, I would be smarter. The first thing I did was break up with David. We'd been dating for 8 months at this point, serious enough that both families were already planning a wedding. Not quite engaged yet, but everyone treated it as inevitable. He was everything my parents wanted for me, successful in finance, from a good family, handsome enough to make my mother's friends jealous. I'd loved him, or thought I had. Looking back with 6 years of hindsight, I realized I'd loved the idea of him, the approval that came with having the right boyfriend, the fantasy of the life we'd build together. The reality had been very different. I called him and asked him to meet me at the coffee shop we'd had our first date at. He arrived exactly on time. David was never late, wearing a suit even though it was Saturday, his hair perfectly styled. "Lily, you look beautiful," he said, kissing my cheek. I didn't feel beautiful. I felt powerful. "David, we need to talk." His smile faltered. That's never a good way to start a conversation. I don't think this is working between us. Silence. He stared at me like I'd started speaking another language. What? I'm ending our relationship. I think we want different things, and I don't see a future for us together. Is this a joke? He actually looked around like maybe there were cameras, like this was some kind of prank. Lily, we've been planning. Your mother and my mother have already talked about venues for the wedding. I never agreed to marry you, David. It was understood. Not by me. His confusion was shifting to anger. I recognized the signs, the tightness in his jaw, the way his hands clenched. In our marriage, I'd learned to spot these tells, to smooth them over with apologies and submission. Not this time. You're making a mistake, he said, his voice low and hard. You'll regret this. I really won't. Your family won't accept this. My mother, can be disappointed. I'm not dating your mother, David. And I'm not dating you anymore either. I stood up, put money on the table for my coffee, and walked away. I could feel his stare on my back, could imagine the shock on his face. David Chen didn't get rejected. Women didn't leave him. But this woman just had. My parents, predictably, lost their minds. You broke up with David? My mother shrieked when I got home. Lily, what were you thinking? I was thinking I don't love him. Love? My father looked up from his newspaper. Lily, love develops over time. David is a good man from a good family. You can learn to love him. Like you two learned to love each other? The words came out before I could stop them. The temperature in the room dropped about 20 degrees. My parents' marriage was civil, functional, and completely devoid of affection. They'd been introduced by their parents, married at 23, and spent the next 30 years coexisting in polite mutual tolerance. Our marriage works, my mother said icily. We have a home, a family, stability. That's more important than romance, Lily. You're being childish. I'm being honest. You're being selfish, Jessica said, walking into the room. Of course, she'd been listening. Do you know how embarrassing this is? Patricia called me this morning in tears. I looked at my sister. At 23, she was everything my parents valued. Beautiful in a conventional way, charming, socially savvy. She worked in marketing at a prestigious firm, dated men who looked good on paper, and never, ever rocked the boat. In my first life, I'd admired her, tried to be like her, sought her approval as desperately as I sought my parents'. Now I saw her clearly. The calculation behind the charm, the jealousy beneath the sisterly affection, the way she'd positioned herself as the golden child by making sure I stayed the problematic one. Patricia will survive, I said. This affects me too, you know, Jessica continued. I'm friends with the whole Chen family. Now everything is going to be awkward. You should have thought about that before you blew up your relationship. You're absolutely right, Jess. I should have considered how my breakup would affect your social life. How thoughtless of me. Her eyes narrowed. Are you being sarcastic? Me? Never. Over the next few weeks, I systematically disentangled myself from the life I'd lived before. I quit my job at Jessica's company. My supervisor was surprised, but supportive, especially when I told her I was accepting a position at one of their competitors with a 20% salary increase. In my first life, I'd turned down that offer because Jessica had convinced me it would be disloyal. I moved out of my parents' house and into a small apartment across the city. It was cramped and the hot water was unreliable, but it was mine. No one could walk into my room uninvited. No one could comment on what I ate or wore or how late I stayed up. I started therapy, found a good doctor who actually listened when I described my family dynamics instead of telling me I should be grateful for such a close-knit family. And I began building something new, something they couldn't touch. The next few years passed differently this time. Without David, without the pressure to be the perfect daughter-in-law, without Jessica's company breathing down my neck, I thrived. My new job was challenging and rewarding. I got promoted twice in 3 years. I dated casually, nothing serious. focusing on myself and my career instead of finding a husband to please my parents. I also made investments, careful, strategic investments based on the knowledge I'd brought back from my previous life. I knew which startups would explode, which stocks would soar, which real estate markets would boom. My grandmother's inheritance, $15,000 that she'd left me and that Jessica had stolen in my first life, I invested in a tech company I knew would triple its value in 18 months. Then I reinvested the profits in pharmaceutical stock right before a major FDA approval. Then real estate in a neighborhood that was about to gentrify. By the time I was 28, I had nearly $400,000 in various accounts and investments. More than my parents knew, more than Jessica suspected. I lived modestly, drove a decent but not flashy car, and never mentioned my growing wealth. I also stayed in touch with my family, just enough to seem normal but not enough to let them back into my life. Dinner once a month, phone calls every few weeks, birthday cards and holiday presents. I watched from a distance as Jessica married a man named Richard, had a lavish wedding that my parents paid for, bought a house in the suburbs with his money. I watched as my mother's health began to decline, the same heart condition that would eventually require expensive treatment and surgery. I watched and I waited because I knew what was coming. I remembered the timeline of my first life, and I knew that soon everything would align exactly as it had before. It started on a Tuesday in October. My mother called me, her voice weak and strained. "Lily, can you come over? I need to talk to you about something important." I went. Of course I went. I'd been expecting this. My father was there sitting at the kitchen table. Jessica was there too, which immediately set off alarms. When Jessica bothered to show up for family meetings, it was never for good reasons. "Lily, thank you for coming," my mother said. She looked tired, older than her 59 years, her hand pressed to her chest in that way she did when she was having heart palpitations. "What's going on?" "Your mother needs surgery," my father said bluntly. "The doctors say it can't wait much longer. Her heart condition has progressed." I already knew this. In my first life, this was the crisis that had brought me back into the family fold, made me vulnerable to their manipulations. They'd needed money for the surgery, a lot of money, and the insurance wasn't going to cover all of it. "How much?" I asked. $200,000, Jessica said. "After insurance, out-of-pocket costs, medication, recovery care, it's around $200,000. That's a lot." "We've been saving," my father said, but we don't have enough. We can cover about half. We need help with the rest." Here it comes, I thought. "Lily, you're doing well at your job," my mother said. "We know you've been saving money. You don't have a family to support, no mortgage, no children. We were hoping you want me to pay for the surgery." "Not all of it," Jessica said quickly. We're all contributing. Richard and I are putting in $40,000. We're asking you to match that." $40,000. In my first life, I'd agreed immediately. I'd been so desperate to prove myself, to show them I was a good daughter, that I'd emptied my savings account and taken on credit card debt to help pay for my mother's surgery. And then, less than 3 years later, when I was the one dying, they'd asked me to sign away what little I had left so Jessica could steal it all. "No," I said, the word hung in the air like smoke. "No," my mother repeated, her voice faint. "I'm not giving you $40,000. "Lily, this is your mother's life," my father said, his face reddening. "And it's my money. I worked hard for it. I saved it. I'm not obligated to pay for her medical care." "Not obligated?" Jessica stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "She's your mother. You're her daughter. How can you be so cold?" "How much are Mom and Dad contributing?" I asked. "What?" "You said Richard and you are putting in $40,000. You want me to put in $40,000. That's $80. The surgery needs $200. How much are Mom and Dad covering from their savings?" Silence. "They're contributing the house," Jessica finally said. "They're taking out a loan against the house," I translated, "which they'll need to pay back with interest. So really, they're contributing future money, not current money. And you want me to drain my savings to cover what they're not willing to pay now?" "I can't believe how selfish you're being," my mother said, and she was crying now, real tears streaming down her face. "After everything we've done for you, you won't help me when I need you most?" In my first life, those tears had destroyed me. I'd caved, apologized, written the check. But I died in a hospital bed, alone, while these same people convinced me to sign away my assets. I'd given them everything, and it still hadn't been enough. "I'll think about it," I said. "Think about it?" my father exploded. "Your mother could die while you're thinking about it." "Then I suggest you figure out another solution quickly." I left. They called after me, angry and pleading, but I walked out of that house and drove home with my hands steady on the wheel. They called me 27 times over the next 3 days. Texts, voicemails, emails. My father's messages were angry. My mother's were guilt-ridden. Jessica's were manipulative, alternating between appeals to family loyalty and accusations of heartlessness. I ignored them all. On the fourth day, Jessica showed up at my apartment. I almost didn't let her in, but curiosity won. I wanted to see what angle she'd try next. "Lily, maestai," she said, brushing past me into the living room. She was dressed in expensive yoga clothes, her hair in a perfect ponytail, looking like she'd just come from the gym or was on her way to brunch with friends. "We need to talk." "So, talk?" "I don't understand why you're being like this. Mom needs our help." "She needs money. That's not the same thing." Jessica studied me, her eyes calculating. "What happened to you? You used to be so sweet, so eager to help. Now you're just bitter." "I grew up. You became selfish. I learned to protect myself." She sat down on my couch uninvited. "Is this about David? Because that was years ago, Lily. You need to let it go." "This has nothing to do with David." "Then what? What do we have to do to convince you that we're not the enemy here?" I almost laughed. They weren't the enemy because they couldn't see themselves clearly enough to recognize their own villainy. In their story, they were the victims, the suffering family dealing with a difficult daughter who refused to help in a crisis. "I'll make you a deal," I said. Jessica perked up. "A deal?" "I'll pay the $40,000 for Mom's surgery, all of it, up front. But in exchange, you and Mom and Dad need to sign an agreement that you'll never ask me for money again. Not for medical bills, not for emergencies, not for down payments or investments or loans. This is the last time." "You want us to sign a contract?" "Yes." "That's insulting." "That's the offer." She stood up, offended. "You're treating your own family like strangers, like we're some kind of con artist trying to steal from you." "Aren't you?" "Fuck you, Lily." She headed for the door. "Mom was right about you. You've always been difficult, always needed to be the center of attention, always made everything about you." "Well, fine, don't help. But don't expect us to forget this." She left, slamming the door behind her. I waited. Sure enough, 2 days later, my mother called. Her voice was weak, defeated. "Lily, Jessica told me about your offer. And? We'll sign it, whatever you want. Just please help me." So we met at a lawyer's office. My lawyer, not theirs, which they complained about but ultimately accepted. The document was simple and clear. In exchange for $40,000 toward her surgery costs, my parents and sister agreed not to request financial assistance from me for any reason for a period of 15 years. There were penalties for violation, including repayment of the $40,000 with interest. My father read it 3 times. "This is really necessary?" "It's necessary for me," I said. They signed. All 3 of them, witnessed and notarized. I wrote the check. My mother's surgery went well. She recovered over the next few months, her heart strengthened, her health stabilized. The family went back to their normal lives, and I went back to mine, maintaining the same distant but cordial relationship we'd had before. And then I waited some more, because I knew the real test was still ahead. 3 years passed. I turned 31, the age I'd been when I died in my first life. I was in perfect health, no mysterious pains, no sudden illness. Whatever forces had brought me back seemed satisfied to let me live differently this time. My investments continued to grow. I'd been smart, diversified, careful. I now had close to $2 million in assets, split across various accounts and investment vehicles. I owned my apartment outright. I had a retirement fund that would let me stop working at 50 if I wanted to. I also started the final phase of my plan. I created a new bank account at a small local bank, not one of the major chains. I transferred exactly $180,000 into it, a significant amount, but nowhere near my actual wealth. Then I set up 3 more accounts at different banks, filled them with just enough money to look substantial. $50,000 here, $75,000 there, $60,000 in the last one. Total, $365,000 in easily accessible accounts. My real money, the bulk of my wealth. I moved into investment accounts, trusts, and offshore holdings that would require multiple authorizations and legal procedures to access. I set up alerts, I built in safeguards, I made it very, very difficult for anyone with power of attorney to touch the money that actually mattered. Then I started to get sick. It began with missed dinners, canceled plans, calls where I sounded tired and mentioned feeling run down. I let myself lose weight, stopped dyeing the gray hairs that had started appearing at my temples, wore less makeup. My mother noticed first. "Lily, are you okay? You look exhausted." "I'm fine, Mom, just busy at work." But I wasn't fine. I let them see. I stumbled at Jessica's birthday party, caught myself on the wall. I fell asleep at the table during a family dinner. I mentioned, casually, that I'd been seeing a doctor about some issues. I let them worry, let them ask questions, let them start to imagine the worst. And then, 6 months after I started this performance, I told them the truth. Or rather, a version of it. We met at my parents' house. My mother had insisted, said she wanted to cook for me, that I looked too thin. I sat at the familiar kitchen table, pushed food around my plate, and finally said, "I need to tell you something." All 3 of them went still. "I'm sick," I said. "The doctors found tumors in my liver." My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father's face went gray. Jessica just stared at me. "How bad?" she asked. "Stage 4, there's treatment, but the prognosis isn't good. They're saying months, maybe a year if the treatment works." It was a lie, every word of it. But I sold it perfectly, let my voice crack in the right places, let tears gather in my eyes, showed them the fear and grief I'd actually felt 6 years ago in another lifetime. My mother cried. My father sat down heavily, like his legs couldn't hold him. Jessica came around the table and hugged me, and I felt her calculating, felt her mind already spinning ahead to implications and opportunities. "We'll get you the best doctors," my father said. "Money is no object." "I have good insurance. I'm starting treatment next month." "You should move back home," my mother said. "Let us take care of you." "I'm not an invalid yet. I can manage. But later, when you get weaker, we'll figure it out." We talked for hours. They asked about symptoms, treatments, survival rates. I gave them just enough detail to be convincing, vague enough to avoid being caught in a contradiction. "I was tired," I said. "The pain was manageable with medication. The doctors were optimistic about buying time. I played the role of the brave, dying daughter perfectly. Over the next few weeks, I let them back into my life, let my mother come to my apartment to clean and bring food, let my father drive me to fake doctor's appointments, let Jessica visit me at work, bringing coffee and sitting with me, during lunch breaks being the concerned sister. And I watched them. Watched the way they looked at me when they thought I wasn't paying attention. Watched the whispered conversations that stopped when I entered rooms. Watched Jessica especially. Saw the wheels turning behind her sympathetic eyes. I knew what was coming. I remembered. It happened on a Thursday evening, 4 months into my illness. I'd lost more weight, actually working out and carefully controlling my diet to look gaunt. I moved slowly as if in pain. I'd even shaved my head, claiming the chemo was making my hair fall out anyway, and I wanted to control it. The baldness made it real for them, in a way nothing else had. My mother called. Could I come over? The whole family wanted to see me. I went. They were all there. Parents, Jessica, even Richard, Jessica's husband. They sat in the living room with the nervous energy of people about to have a difficult conversation. Lily, we want to talk to you about planning ahead, Jessica said. She'd positioned herself as the spokesperson, the strong one who could handle difficult topics. Planning ahead? For when you're For when things get harder, she said, for end-of-life decisions and estate management. I'm not dead yet, Jess. We know and we're praying for a miracle, but we need to be realistic too. You should have your affairs in order. I have a will. A will is good, Richard said. He was a lawyer, not a good one, but competent enough for basic estate work. But you should also consider a power of attorney. Someone who can make decisions for you if you become incapacitated. There it was. The treatments can affect your cognition, Jessica added. If you can't make financial or medical decisions, someone needs to be able to act on your behalf. It's just being practical. Who would you suggest? I asked, knowing the answer. I'll do it, Jessica said immediately. I'm your sister. I know you better than anyone. And I have the time. I've been cutting back on work to spend more time with you. She had been around more lately, I'd noticed. Never suspected in my first life that she was positioning herself, making sure everyone would think she was the obvious choice. I don't know, I said. It seems like a lot to put on you. It's not too much. I want to do this, Lily. I want to help you. Jessica would be perfect, my mother said. She's organized and responsible, and she loves you so much. My father nodded and might say, It makes sense, Lily. You need someone you can trust. Trust. That word again. I let them convince me. Put up resistance, but not too much. Expressed concerns, but let them be soothed away. Played the part of someone who was tired, sick, and running out of fight. Okay, I finally said, if you think it's best. Richard drew up the documents, a power of attorney granting Jessica full authority over my financial and medical decisions if I became incapacitated. Standard language, all legal and proper. I read it carefully, more carefully than I had the first time when I'd been dying and drugged and desperate. This is very broad, I noted. It gives you access to everything. That's the point, Jessica said. So I can help you with anything that needs to be handled. It includes the ability to access my bank accounts. Only if you can't do it yourself. Only if you're incapacitated, Lily. Otherwise, it's just a piece of paper. And there's no oversight. No one checking to make sure the authority isn't abused. Do you think I'd abuse it? Jessica looked hurt, betrayed. I'm your sister. I'm doing this to help you. I'm just asking questions. She's being thorough, Richard said smoothly. It's smart to understand what you're signing. But Jessica's right. This is standard language for a power of attorney. And Lily, you know Jessica. You know she'd never take advantage of you. I looked at my sister, at her concerned expression, her reached out hand, her eyes that were just a little too eager. You're right, I said. I'm sorry. I'm just tired and scared, and I'm not thinking clearly. It's okay, Jessica said, squeezing my hand. This is scary, but we're here for you. We'll take care of everything. I signed the document. They all relaxed visibly. My mother hugged me. My father patted my shoulder. Richard notarized the signature. Jessica took the document, folded it carefully, put it in her purse. There, she said. Now we're prepared for anything. Thank you, I said. For taking this on, I know it's a burden. You're my sister. It's not a burden. It's love. I went home that night and sat in my apartment with a glass of wine, thinking about what I'd just done. In my first life, I'd signed that power of attorney hours before I died, under pressure and morphine, with no time to protect myself. This time, I'd signed it completely sober, completely aware, as part of a plan. Because Jessica was predictable. Greedy, manipulative, but predictable, and I knew exactly what she was going to do next. I gave it a week, 7 days of playing the sick, trusting sister, I went to work, told everyone I was on medical leave, working from home. I stayed in my apartment, ordered food delivery, saw no one but family. I checked my bank accounts obsessively. The 4 accounts I'd set up specifically for this purpose, the ones with $365,000 total. The accounts Jessica now had legal authority to access if she wanted to claim I was incapacitated. On day 8, I got the first alert. Jessica had accessed the main account, the one with $180,000. She'd authorized a transfer of $50,000 to an account in her name. I sat there watching the notification on my phone, feeling a cold satisfaction settle in my chest. She couldn't help herself. She couldn't even wait to see if I'd actually become incapacitated. She just saw the opportunity and took it. Over the next 3 days, she cleaned out that account, smalls, transfers, probably thinking they'd be less noticeable. $50,000, then $30,000, then another $50,000, until the account was empty. Then she started on the second account, the one with $75,000. She took $40,000 first, then $20,000, then the rest. The third account, $60,000 total, gone in 2 transfers. The fourth account, $50,000, emptied. In less than 2 weeks, my sister had stolen $365,000 from me while I was supposedly dying of cancer. My phone rang constantly, her name on the screen. I didn't answer. Let her calls go to voicemail, let her texts pile up unanswered. I waited until she'd taken every penny from those 4 accounts. And then I went to the bank to revoke the power of attorney. The bank manager had been professionally sympathetic when I explained the situation. Accounts emptied by someone with power of attorney, just hours before I came in to revoke it. "I'm very sorry, Ms. Chen," he'd said. "Unfortunately, there's nothing we can do. The withdrawals were legal at the time." I'd thanked him, gathered my papers, and left. And then I went home and made a call. "Detective Morrison," I said when he answered. "This is Lily Chen. I need to report a theft." The police station was depressing in that universal way all police stations are. Fluorescent lights, industrial carpet, the smell of burned coffee, and exhausted bureaucracy. Detective Morrison was in his 50s, graying and tired-looking, but his eyes were sharp when he led me into an interview room. "Tell me what happened, Ms. Chen." I laid it out for him, the cancer diagnosis, the power of attorney, my sister's access to my accounts, the transfers that had emptied them while I was still perfectly capable of managing my own affairs. "Did you sign the power of attorney under duress?" he asked. "No, I signed it voluntarily. I thought I could trust my sister." "And the power of attorney language, did it specify that it was only effective if you were incapacitated?" I pulled out the document, showed him. "It says if and when the principal becomes unable to manage their affairs. I was never unable. I've been working from home, paying my bills, making my own decisions. She just decided to help herself." Morrison read the document carefully. "This is borderline. Legally, she might argue she believed you were incapacitated due to your illness. She stole $365,000 from me while I'm dealing with cancer, Detective. I don't really care what she might argue." He studied me for a long moment. "Ms. Chen, can I ask you something? Why did you wait until after she emptied the accounts to revoke the power of attorney? Why not revoke it as soon as you saw the first transfer?" I'd been prepared for this question. "Because I needed to know for sure," I said quietly. "I needed to know if my sister was really capable of stealing from me while I'm dying. If she'd taken a little, maybe I could have forgiven it, thought it was a mistake. But she took everything, Detective. Every penny she could access. That tells me exactly who she is." He nodded slowly. "I'll need documentation. Bank statements, the power of attorney, any communications between you and your sister." "I have everything." I did. I had bank statements showing every transfer. I had texts from Jessica asking how I was feeling, expressing love and concern while she was actively draining my accounts. I had a timeline showing I'd been perfectly functional, working, making decisions during the entire period she was stealing from me. I also had one more thing. "Detective," I said, "I should mention, those 4 accounts she emptied, they weren't my only accounts." His eyebrow went up. "No?" No, I have other investments, other savings, accounts she didn't have access to or didn't know about. The money she stole was significant to me, but I'm not financially destroyed. I want you to know that because I want to pursue this to the fullest extent of the law. This isn't about the money. It's about what she did. What I didn't tell him was that the $365,000 was bait. Money I deliberately made visible and accessible, knowing Jessica couldn't resist. Money I could afford to lose because I had nearly $2 million safely tucked away where she couldn't touch it. The trap was set. Now we just had to see if Jessica was smart enough to see it closing. She wasn't. The police contacted her 3 days later, asked her to come in for questioning about financial irregularities concerning her sister's accounts. She came in with Richard, her lawyer husband. They sat across from Detective Morrison in the same interview room where I'd been, and I watched from behind the one-way glass as he questioned her. Ms. Grant, Morrison said, you have power of attorney for your sister, Lily Chen, is that correct? Yes, Jessica said. She looked nervous but composed. Lily has been very sick. Cancer. I agreed to help manage her affairs. And as part of managing her affairs, you transferred approximately $365,000 from her accounts to your own? I didn't transfer anything to my own accounts, she said immediately. Morrison slid bank statements across the table. These records show multiple transfers from Ms. Chen's accounts to an account in your name. Over the course of 2 weeks, you emptied 4 different bank accounts. Jessica looked at the statements, and I saw the moment she realized she was in trouble. Her face went pale. I can explain. Please do. Lily was sick. She was getting sicker. I was worried about her medical bills, about making sure she had good care. I was consolidating her funds to make them easier to manage. By transferring them to yourself? To an account I could access easily, yes, for her benefit. Did Ms. Chen authorize these specific transfers? She gave me power of attorney. That was the authorization. The power of attorney specifies it's only effective if she becomes unable to manage her affairs, Morrison said. Was Ms. Chen unable to manage her affairs? She's dying of cancer. That's not what I asked. Was she incapacitated? Unconscious? Mentally incompetent? Jessica looked at Richard, who put a hand on her arm. My client was acting in her sister's best interests based on the authority granted to her. $365,000 to your client's personal account is a lot of best interests, Morrison said dryly. The money is safe, Jessica said. I didn't spend it. It's still there. I was just managing it for her. Then you won't have any problem returning it. Silence. Ms. Grant, you said the money is still there. Will you authorize a transfer back to Ms. Chen's accounts? I need to consult with my husband. Your husband is right there. More silence. Jessica and Richard were having some kind of wordless conversation, something desperate passing between them. Finally, Jessica said, the money it's been invested. I can't access it immediately. You said it was still there. It is, but it's tied up in investment vehicles. It'll take time to liquidate. Morrison leaned back in his chair. Ms. Grant, let me be direct. Your sister has filed a complaint of theft. She says you stole $365,000 from her while she was sick and vulnerable. She's provided extensive documentation showing that she was fully functional and capable of managing her own affairs during the time you were making these transfers. She's also provided communications showing you never asked for her consent or informed her of what you were doing. She knew I had power of attorney. Having power of attorney doesn't give you the right to steal. I didn't steal anything. Jessica's composure cracked. She's my sister. I was helping her. And now she's twisting everything because she's angry and sick and not thinking clearly. She seems pretty clear to me, Morrison said. Clear enough to notice $365,000 missing from her accounts. This is ridiculous, Richard said. My wife was acting in good faith under a legal document. If there's been a misunderstanding about the scope of her authority, that's a civil matter, not a criminal one. Theft is theft, Mr. Grant, even when it's family. They went back and forth for another 20 minutes, Jessica alternating between defensive and tearful, Richard trying to legally maneuver, Morrison remaining calm and relentless. Finally, he said, "Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to complete my investigation. I'm going to review all the evidence Ms. Chen provided and compare it to your explanation. If I determine there's probable cause, I'll be recommending charges. Grand larceny, exploitation of a vulnerable person. We'll see what the DA thinks fits." "This will destroy her," Richard said quietly. "She should have thought of that before taking $365,000 that wasn't hers." I walked out of the police station feeling lighter than I had in years, both lifetimes. Jessica called me 17 times that night, left voicemails that progressed from apologetic to angry to desperate. "Lily, please, we need to talk about this. I didn't steal from you. I was trying to help." "Lily, you can't let the police do this. I'm your sister. We're family." "Lily, think about mom and dad. This will kill them. The shame, the publicity, is that what you want?" "Lily, you fucking bitch, answer your phone. You set me up. You planned this. You gave me access to those accounts knowing you could use it against me." That last message made me smile. She'd almost said it, almost admitted she'd been planning to steal from me all along. I didn't call her back. Instead, I called my parents. My mother answered, and I could hear she'd been crying. "Lily? Oh, Lily, what's happening? Jessica said you went to the police?" "She stole from me, Mom. While I'm sick. While I trusted her to help me, she emptied my accounts." "There must be a misunderstanding. Jessica would never—" "She took $365,000. It's not a misunderstanding. It's theft." "But she's your sister." "And I'm your daughter. Doesn't that matter?" Silence on the line. Then my father's voice, having taken the phone. "Lily, you need to drop this. Family doesn't air their problems in public. We'll sort this out privately." "Like we sorted out Mom's surgery? Like we sorted out everything else? By me giving and giving while everyone else takes?" "What are you talking about?" "I paid $40,000 for Mom's surgery, Dad. Emptied my savings because you pressured me into it. And now when I'm the one who's sick, Jessica decides to help herself to my money?" "That's different. Your mother needed—" "And I don't? I don't need someone I can trust? I don't need my family to actually care about me instead of my bank account?" "You're being dramatic," he said. "Jessica made a mistake. Probably panicked about your medical bills and thought she was helping. It doesn't warrant involving the police. She stole. From me. While I'm dying. And you want me to just forgive that? I want you to be reasonable." "I am being reasonable. I'm treating this exactly the way I'd treat it if anyone else had stolen from me." "But she's not anyone else," my father shouted. She's your sister. That means something." "It should mean she wouldn't steal from me." I hung up, let them call back, sent it to voicemail, let them text, didn't respond. I was done. The investigation took 6 weeks. Detective Morrison was thorough, interviewed my doctors, my employer, my neighbors. Built a timeline showing I'd been fully functional during the entire period Jessica was taking my money. Documented every transfer, every lie, every moment she'd played the concerned sister while robbing me blind. The DA agreed to prosecute. Jessica was charged with grand larceny and exploitation of a vulnerable person. The second charge, exploitation, was what really hurt her. It came with enhanced penalties because I was supposedly suffering from a serious illness, the Fiat. Irony was exquisite. The preliminary hearing was a circus. Media attention. Local news loved the story of the sister stealing from her cancer-stricken sibling. My parents sat behind Jessica in the courtroom, glaring at me across the aisle like I was the criminal. Jessica's lawyer argued it was all a misunderstanding, that Jessica had power of attorney and believed she was acting in my best interests, that I was mentally compromised by my illness and treatment and didn't understand what I was authorizing. My lawyer, and I'd hired a good one, criminal defense specialist with a mean streak, demolished that argument. Brought in my doctor who testified I'd never been mentally incapacitated. Brought in my boss who testified I'd been working throughout my illness, producing quality work, making sound decisions. Brought in the bank manager who testified that I'd come in to revoke the power of attorney, clearly lucid and oriented. And then they showed the timeline. Jessica accessing my accounts within days of receiving the power of attorney. Taking money in a pattern that suggested deliberate theft, not emergency management. Transferring funds to her personal accounts and then, when questioned, lying about what she'd done with it. "Where's the money now, Ms. Grant?" the prosecutor asked during the hearing. "In investments," Jessica said. "What investments specifically?" "I don't recall exactly." "You don't recall what you did with $365,000? "It's been stressful. I've been worried about my sister." "Worried enough to steal from her, apparently." "Objection!" Richard jumped up. "Sustained," the judge said. But the damage was done. The judge ruled there was sufficient evidence for trial. Set bail at $50,000, which Richard paid. Jessica walked out of the courthouse looking pale and shaken, surrounded by cameras and reporters shouting questions. I walked out the opposite side entrance, got in my car, and drove home. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no guilt, no triumph. Just a cold certainty that I was doing what needed to be done. The trial was scheduled for 4 months later. In the meantime, my life continued. I went to work, told everyone the cancer was in remission, that the treatments had worked better than expected. Started looking healthy again, let my hair grow back, gained weight. My coworkers were thrilled. My boss was relieved. Everyone loves a good recovery story. My family was less thrilled. My mother called crying. "Lily, the doctor said you're getting better, that the cancer is going away?" "Looks like it, Mom. I'm very lucky." "But you told us you were dying." "The doctors told me I was probably dying. Turns out they were wrong." Jessica is facing trial because you told us you were dying, because she thought she was helping a dying woman. She was stealing from a fully functional woman who trusted her. My prognosis doesn't change that. It changes everything. If you're getting better, then you have to drop the charges. You have to tell them it was all a mistake. "It wasn't a mistake, Mom. She stole from me." "She's your sister." "You keep saying that like it means I'm supposed to let her rob me." My mother was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "You were never this hard, Lily. You used to be sweet, kind. What happened to you?" "What happened to me?" "I died alone in a hospital bed while my family stole what little I had left. That's what happened to me. I came back with full knowledge of exactly how little I meant to the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. But I couldn't say that. I grew up, Mom. I learned that being kind doesn't mean being a doormat. Your father and I raised you better than this. You raised me to be convenient. There's a difference." She hung up on me. I didn't call back. Jessica tried to reach out too. Letters, since I'd blocked her number. Long, rambling things that started apologetic and ended accusatory. "I'm sorry I took the money without asking, but you gave me power of attorney. That means you trusted me to make decisions. I was making decisions. You're destroying our family over money, Lily. Is that really who you want to be? The person who puts money over love?" Mom is sick again. The stress from all this has made her heart condition worse. If something happens to her, it's on you. I read them all, threw them all away. The truth was coming out in discovery. Richard had to disclose where the money went as part of Jessica's defense, and it turned out she'd been in debt. Serious debt. Credit cards maxed out, personal loans. She and Richard had been living far beyond their means for years. The $365,000 she stole from me had gone straight to paying off her creditors. So much for keeping it safe for me. The prosecutor loved this detail. Financial motive clear and obvious. Not a sister trying to help, but a debtor seeing an opportunity. Jessica's defense team tried to negotiate, offer restitution, community service, probation in exchange for dropping the charges. I said no to all of it. "Ms. Chen," Richard said, calling me directly after I rejected the third plea deal, "you're going to destroy my wife's life over this. She'll have a felony conviction. She won't be able to work in her field. We'll lose everything. She destroyed my trust, I said. She stole from me when I was vulnerable. Why should I care what happens to her now? Because she's your family. Family doesn't steal from each other, Richard. Everyone makes mistakes. Stealing $365,000 isn't a mistake. It's a choice. Multiple choices, actually, since she took the money over the course of 2 weeks. She had plenty of time to stop and didn't. Please, his voice cracked. I'm begging you. Jessica is a good person who made a bad decision. Don't ruin her life for this. She tried to ruin mine. Turnabout is fair play. I hung up. The trial lasted a week. Prosecution laid out the evidence. Methodically. Bank records, testimony, timeline. Showed that Jessica had access to my accounts and used that access to steal. Showed that I was never incapacitated. Showed that she'd lied about what she did with the money. The defense tried to paint me as vindictive, as a bitter sister going after family. Tried to suggest I'd set Jessica up by giving her power of attorney, knowing she might use it. My lawyer objected to that line of questioning. Your Honor, the defense is essentially arguing that the victim is responsible for being a victim because she trusted her own sister. That's absurd. Sustained, the judge said. The jury deliberated for 3 hours, guilty on both counts. Jessica sobbed in the courtroom. My mother sobbed. My father sat stone-faced. Richard put his head in his hands. I sat there feeling the same cold nothing I'd felt through this entire process. Sentencing was 2 weeks later. The judge looked down at Jessica and said, Ms. Grant, you violated your sister's trust in the most fundamental way. She came to you for help during a health crisis, and you saw an opportunity for theft. This court takes exploitation of vulnerable people very seriously. 5 years in prison. Restitution of $365,000 plus interest. Felony conviction on her record forever. Jessica turned to look at me as they led her away in handcuffs. Her face was blotchy from crying, her carefully maintained appearance destroyed by stress and despair. She mouthed something. I couldn't tell if it was "I'm sorry" or "I hate you." Didn't matter either way. I walked out of that courtroom and into the rest of my life. My parents stopped speaking to me entirely. Made it clear through intermediaries that I was no longer welcome in their home and family gatherings in their lives. I'd chosen money over family, they said. I'd destroyed their daughter over greed. Fine, I'd seen how they treated daughters. I wasn't missing much. The news coverage died down eventually. Local interest in a family crime drama only lasts so long. People moved on to other scandals, other tragedies. I moved on too, took a new job at a different company, better pay and better title. Started dating again, actual dating, not trying to find a husband to please my parents. Met interesting people, had interesting experiences, focused on building a life I actually wanted instead of one that met someone else's expectations. And the money? The $365,000 that Jessica stole and had to repay? I donated it, all of it, to a cancer research fund in my grandmother's name. The grandmother who'd left me that original $15,000 that started my whole fortune, who'd been the only person in my family who ever saw me as more than a tool to use or a problem to manage. The irony was perfect. Jessica had stolen money thinking she'd get rich, and instead it went to help people actually suffering from the disease I'd lied about having. Sometimes late at night, I think about the life I lived before, the one where I really did have cancer, where I really did die at 31, alone and betrayed. I think about signing that power of attorney while dying, about how Jessica must have drained my accounts just like she tried to do this time, about how none of them ever faced consequences. That version of me didn't get justice, but this version did. And that makes the whole elaborate con worth it. 3 years after Jessica's conviction, I was 34 years old and living in a condo downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the city lights. I had a career I loved, friends who actually cared about me, and enough money to be comfortable without being showy. I'd started seeing someone, Marcus, a professor of physics at the university, divorced, no kids, with a dry sense of humor, and an acceptance of my boundaries around family that I found deeply attractive. "So your family really doesn't talk to you at all?" he asked one evening over dinner at my place. "Haven't heard from any of them in 3 years," I said. "My parents made their choice. My sister is in prison. That's it." "Do you miss them?" I thought about it. Sometimes I miss the idea of them. the fantasy of having a loving, supportive family. But the reality? No. I don't miss the manipulation, the guilt trips, the constant expectation that I should give up everything for people who would never do the same for me. That's healthy, he said. Took me a long time to get here. He reached across the table, took my hand. Well, I'm glad you did. The woman you are now, she's pretty remarkable. I smiled. He didn't know the half of it. Didn't know about the rebirth, the second chance, the elaborate trap I'd set for my own sister. Didn't need to know. Some stories you keep to yourself. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello? Lily, it's Richard. I hadn't heard his voice in 3 years. What do you want? Jessica got out early, good behavior, overcrowding. They released her yesterday. My heart didn't even skip. And you're telling me this why? Because she wants to see you. She wants to apologize. No. Lily, she's done her time. She's paid for what she did. The least you could do is hear her out. I don't owe her anything, Richard. Not my time, not my forgiveness, nothing. She made her choices. Now she lives with them. She's your sister. She stopped being my sister when she stole from me. Goodbye, Richard. I hung up, blocked the number. Marcus was watching me. Everything okay? Everything's perfect, I said. And it was. Because here's what Jessica never understood, what my parents never understood, what none of them got. Family isn't about blood. It's about trust, respect, love, real love, not the conditional kind that evaporates the moment you stop being useful. They failed that test in my first life, and they failed it again in this one. But I passed. I protected myself. I stood up for myself. I refused to be a victim. And now I get to live the life I actually want, free from people who see me as an ATM or a punching bag or a convenient scapegoat. I get to be happy. That night, after Marcus went home, I stood by my windows looking out at the city. All those lights, all those lives, all those stories. Mine was pretty good now. I thought about Jessica, freshly released from prison, probably expecting me to welcome her back, to forgive and forget, to play the role of the good sister one more time. She was going to be disappointed. I'd given her every chance in both lifetimes to be better. She'd chosen greed both times. I was done giving chances. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Lily, it's Mom. Jessica told me you refused to see her. After everything she's been through, you can't even give her an hour. You've punished her enough. It's time to forgive. I stared at that message for a long moment. Then I typed back, she stole from me. I was the victim. I don't owe her forgiveness, and I don't owe you an explanation. Please don't contact me again. I blocked that number too. And then I poured myself a glass of wine, put on music, and danced around my apartment in my pajamas like a crazy person, laughing and free and utterly, completely at peace. Because I'd won. Not just the trial, not just the revenge, but something bigger. I'd won my life back. In my first life, I'd died surrounded by people who were already spending my money in their heads. In this life, I would live surrounded by people who valued me for more than what I could give them. That was justice. That was freedom. That was everything. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls from various unknown numbers, a bunch of voicemails I didn't listen to, and one message from Jessica herself that just said, I'm sorry. Too little, too late, and not nearly enough. I deleted everything, got dressed for work, and stopped for coffee on the way in. The barista remembered my order, asked how my weekend was, drew a smiley face in the foam. Small kindnesses from strangers meant more to me now than grand gestures from family ever had. At the office, my assistant had already organized my schedule. My team had a project update ready to present, and my boss stopped by to tell me I was being considered for a VP position. You've done excellent work, Lily, she said. The board is impressed. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. You've earned it. I had. Through my own effort, my own talent, my own determination. Not through family connections or manipulation or playing games, through actually being good at my job. What a concept. Lunchtime, my phone rang again. This time I recognized the number, Detective Morrison. Ms. Chen, he said when I answered, I wanted to give you a heads up. Jessica Grant has been released from custody. I know, her husband called me. She's filed a restraining order. Against you. I actually laughed. She filed a restraining order? Against me? Claims you've been harassing her, threatening her, stalking her online. That's absurd. I haven't contacted her once since the trial. I have no interest in seeing her or speaking to her ever again. I know. I told the judge that. The request was denied. But I wanted you to be aware she tried. Thanks for the heads up, Detective. One more thing. She's been telling people you framed her, that you set her up, lied about having cancer just to trap her. That's actually partially true, I admitted. Excuse me? I didn't have cancer. I let her believe I did because I knew how she'd react. But the theft was real, Detective. She really did steal from me. Everything else was just strategic positioning. Silence on the line. Then Morrison said, That's ice cold, Ms. Chen. She did the same thing to me and I caught myself. She would have done the same thing regardless. I just made it easier for her to show who she really was. Well, either way, the conviction stands. She's guilty of the crime she committed. Whatever you did or didn't do before that doesn't change the fact that she stole from you. Thank you, Detective. After we hung up, I sat there thinking about what I'd almost said. She did the same thing to me in my previous life. Would Morrison have believed me if I'd told him the whole truth? That I was living my life a second time? That I knew exactly what Jessica would do because she'd already done it once before? Probably not. Most people don't believe in rebirth, in second chances, in cosmic do-overs. But I didn't need him to believe. I knew the truth. That was enough. The rest of the day passed normally. Meetings, emails, decisions. The mundane rhythm of a life well lived. That evening, Marcus came over with takeout and a movie. We ate on the couch, his arm around me, comfortable and easy. You seem lighter today, he said. Something good happen? Just closure, I guess. My sister got out of prison yesterday, tried to make it my problem, and I successfully made it not my problem. Good for you. Boundaries are healthy. They really are. We watched the movie, laughed at the funny parts, debated the ending. Normal couple things. Simple things. I'd never had this before. Not with David, who'd been a checkbox on my parents' list, not in my first life, where every relationship had been filtered through family expectations and social positioning. This was just real. And real was so much better than perfect. Later, after Marcus left, I did something I hadn't done in a while. I went to my laptop, opened a private folder, and looked at the timeline I'd created years ago. A spreadsheet tracking everything I remembered from my first life. Major events, personal milestones, investment opportunities, disasters to avoid. Most of it I'd already used. The investments I'd made, the career moves I'd planned, the elaborate trap I'd set for Jessica, but there were a few things left. Small notations, minor events, a friend's wedding where I'd been a bridesmaid and caught the bouquet, a work trip where I'd met someone who became important later, a random Tuesday where something had changed everything. I looked at the dates, comparing them to my current timeline. Some things had already happened differently. The butterfly effect of my changed choices rippling outward, creating new patterns. But some things were still on track to happen, including one event I'd been dreading and preparing for in equal measure. 6 months from now, according to my original timeline, my mother would have another heart episode. More severe this time. She'd need another surgery, more expensive, more risky. And in my first life, I'd been dead by then. Jessica would have been the one they turned to for help. Jessica, who had all my money to use as she pleased. But in this life, Jessica was broke and fresh out of prison. My parents had no relationship with me. They'd driven away their only financially stable daughter. The question was, what would I do when they came asking? Because they would ask. Pride only went so far when you needed life-saving medical treatment. I closed the laptop without answering that question. 6 months was a long time. A lot could change. I'd worry about it when it happened. Or maybe I wouldn't worry about it at all. Maybe I'd just say no and live with the consequences the same way they'd lived with theirs. Time passed. Seasons changed. I got the VP promotion and a corner office with an even better view. Marcus and I moved in together, a decision that felt right and easy and completely free of anyone's approval but our own. Jessica apparently moved back in with my parents. Her career was destroyed by the felony conviction. She and Richard divorced, and she had nowhere else to go. I heard this through the grapevine, mutual acquaintances who didn't know the whole story, who thought they were being kind by keeping me updated. I didn't ask for updates. Didn't want them. But they came anyway. Jessica was working retail, living in her childhood bedroom, going to therapy supposedly, working on herself. Good for her, I guess. My parents were helping support her, their golden child fallen from grace back under their roof. I wondered if they regretted their choices. If they looked at Jessica, broke, convicted, divorced, and thought about their other daughter who was thriving without them. Probably not. People like that don't do self-reflection. They just find new ways to be victims. And then, right on schedule, 6 months after Jessica's release, my mother collapsed at home. Heart failure. Emergency surgery needed immediately. Cost $250,000 after insurance. My father called me. First time I'd heard his voice in 3 years. "Lily, your mother is dying. We need your help." I could hang up, block the number, pretend I never heard. Or I could do what they never expected. "How much do you need yet?" I asked. "What?" "For the surgery. How much do you need?" $250,000. He sounded shocked that I was even asking. "But Lily, we don't have a right to ask you after everything." "You're right. You don't have a right, but I'll pay for it anyway." Silence. Then, why? Because unlike you, I actually understand what family is supposed to mean. I'll have my lawyer contact you with the payment details, but Dad? Yes? This is the last time. After this, I'm done. We're not a family anymore. We're strangers who happen to share DNA. You get Mom's surgery, and then you leave me alone forever. Understood? Lily, is that understood? Yes, he said quietly. Yes, I understand. I hung up. Marcus found me sitting on the couch staring at nothing. What happened? I just agreed to pay for my mother's surgery. He sat down next to me. I thought you weren't speaking to them. I'm not, but I'm not going to let her die out of spite either. That would make me just like them. So you're the bigger person. I'm the person who gets to live with her choices, and I choose to be someone who saves lives when I can, even when those lives belong to people who don't deserve it. He kissed my forehead. You're a good person, Lily Chen. I'm a person who's done terrible things for good reasons, I corrected. There's a difference. Is there? I thought about it. About the lies I'd told, the trap I'd set, the sister I'd sent to prison. About the justice I'd gotten and the price everyone had paid. I don't know, I admitted, but I can live with the uncertainty. My mother's surgery was successful. She recovered slowly but steadily. My father sent a thank you card, formal, stiff, awkward. I didn't respond. Jessica sent a letter, an actual handwritten letter, pages long. I almost threw it away without reading, but curiosity won. Dear Lily, it started. I know I have no right to write to you. I know I've destroyed any chance of a relationship between us, but I need you to know that I'm sorry. Not because I want your forgiveness or because I think it will change anything, but because you deserve to hear it. I was jealous of you, always. You were smart without trying, successful without struggling, confident in ways I could never manage. I built my entire life around appearing perfect, and you just were. And I resented you for it. When you got sick, I saw an opportunity. I wish I could say I didn't know what I was doing, that I was confused or scared, but I knew. I knew exactly what I was doing. I saw your money as a solution to all my problems, and I took it. I deserve everything that happened to me. The trial, the conviction, the prison time. I deserve your hatred. I deserve to have lost everything. But I need you to know I see it now. I see who I was and what I did, and I'm trying to be better. Not for you, I know. We're done. But for myself. So I can look in the mirror and not see a thief and a liar. You don't need to forgive me. You don't need to respond to this letter. I just needed you to know that you were right about everything, and I'm sorry it took losing everything for me to understand that. I hope you're happy, Lily. I hope you're building the life you always deserved, and I hope someday I'll deserve my life too. Jessica. I read that letter 3 times. Then I folded it up, put it in a box with all the other documents from that whole mess, the bank statements, the police reports, the trial transcripts, and stored the box in the back of my closet. Evidence of a war I'd won and a family I'd lost and a justice I'd earned. I didn't write back. Jessica was right. We were done. But I could acknowledge her apology privately, even if I'd never tell her. Some growth deserved recognition, even from a distance. Life went on. It does that, keeps moving forward whether you're ready or not. Marcus proposed on a random Wednesday in March. No grand gesture, no elaborate plan, just the 2 of us in our apartment making dinner, and he turned to me and said, "I want to spend the rest of my life with you." I said yes without hesitation. We got married in a small ceremony, his family, my friends, no blood relatives on my side. No one who'd see me as a bank account or a trophy or a convenient scapegoat, just people who loved me for who I was. It was perfect. On my wedding day, I thought about my first marriage. The elaborate ceremony, the carefully curated guest list, the performance of it all. David standing at the altar looking handsome and appropriate and absolutely uninterested in me as a person. This was so much better. Marcus looked at me like I was the answer to every question he'd ever had. I looked at him the same way. We wrote our own vows, mine included. I promise to be honest with you, to trust you, and to build a life where we both feel safe and valued. His included, I promise to be your family in all the ways that matter. I cried. Happy tears, the kind I'd never cried in my first life. At the reception, my boss gave a toast. Marcus's sister gave a toast. My best friend, Sarah, gave a toast that had everyone laughing and crying at the same time. No one mentioned my family. Everyone there knew the story, and they all understood. Some gaps are better left empty than filled with people who hurt you. That night, lying next to my new husband in our new life, I felt something I'd never expected to feel after everything I'd been through. Peace. Not the cold satisfaction of revenge, not the bitter triumph of proving them wrong, just peace. I'd fought so hard for so long, fought to survive, to thrive, to protect myself, to get justice, and now I could stop fighting. Now I could just live. 2 years into my marriage, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello? Lily, it's Jessica. My hand tightened on the phone. How did you get this number? I'm not supposed to contact you, I know, but I needed to tell you something. Mom died last night. The world tilted slightly. What? Her heart? She went peacefully in her sleep. I thought you should know. I sat down. My mother was dead. The woman who'd raised me criticized me, manipulated me, guilted me into paying for her surgery, and then continued to choose my criminal sister over me. She was gone. When's the funeral? I heard myself ask. Friday, 2 p.m. at St. Mark's. Lily, you don't have to come. I know you don't owe us anything, but if you want to say goodbye, you're welcome. Is Dad? He's devastated. But he's managing, and Lily, thank you for paying for the surgery. It gave us 2 more years with her. I know you didn't do it for us, but thank you. She hung up before I could respond. I sat there with the phone in my hand, feeling too many things at once to name any of them. Marcus found me like that. What's wrong? My mother died. He sat down next to me, pulled me close. I'm sorry, love. I don't know how I feel. You don't have to know right now. I hated her sometimes. For what she let them do to me. For always choosing Jessica. For making me feel like I was never enough. Those feelings are valid. But I also loved her. She was my mother. She tucked me in at night when I was little. She taught me to bake cookies. She was there for my first day of school, my graduation, all the big moments. Both things can be true. It doesn't feel fair that she died thinking I hated her. Did you hate her? I thought about it. No, I was angry. I was hurt. But I didn't hate her. I just needed her to be different than she was, and she couldn't be that person. Are you going to the funeral? I don't know. Part of me wants to go to say goodbye properly. Part of me thinks it would be hypocritical after cutting them out of my life. What does your heart say? My heart said a lot of contradictory things, but mostly it said, you get one mother, even if she wasn't the mother you needed. You get one chance to say goodbye. I'll go, I decided. But I'm not going for them. I'm going for me. The funeral was exactly what I expected. Traditional, somber, well-attended. My mother had been social, popular in her circles. People came to pay respects, to comfort my father, to share memories. I sat in the back, Marcus beside me. Nobody noticed us come in. The service was nice. The priest said kind things. Jessica gave a eulogy that was heartfelt and tearful. My father sat in the front row, shoulders shaking with grief. I felt oddly distant from it all, like I was watching from behind glass. This was their grief, their loss. My grief was more complicated, more layered. I was mourning not just the mother I'd lost, but the mother I'd never really had. The one who would have chosen me, protected me, loved me without conditions. After the service, people milled around offering condolences. I stayed in my seat, not ready to face them. My father saw me eventually, walked over slowly, leaning on a cane I didn't remember him needing. Lily, he said, you came. I came. Thank you. It would have meant a lot to your mother. Would it have? Or would she have resented my presence, seen it as a disruption to the family she'd chosen, the one that included Jessica but not me? I'm sorry for your loss, I said, because that's what you say at funerals. I'm sorry for mine too, he said. And I wasn't sure if he meant my mother or me. Jessica approached carefully, like I might bolt or attack. Lily, thank you for coming. I needed to say goodbye. She talked about you, near the end. Said she wished things had been different, that she'd handled things better. We all wish that, I said. Will you? Jessica hesitated. Will you come back to the house for the reception? People would like to see you. No, I came to pay respects. That's all. I understand. I stood up. Marcus stood with me. We walked toward the exit together. Lily, my father called after me. I stopped, turned. Your mother loved you. I hope you know that. She wasn't always good at showing it, but she loved you. I nodded. I know, Dad. I did know. Love and hurt aren't mutually exclusive. You can be loved by someone who still damages you. You can love someone you can't be around. The tragedy is in the gap between those two truths. Marcus and I left the church, drove home in comfortable silence. He didn't try to make me talk, didn't ask how I was feeling, just held my hand and let me process. That night, I cried. Finally, fully, let myself grieve not just the death, but everything that came before it. The wasted potential, the broken relationships, the family that could have been. And then I let it go. I had my own life now, my own family, the one I'd chosen and built. Marcus and his family, my friends, the people who saw me and valued me and never made me prove my worth. That was enough, more than enough. It was everything. 5 years after my mother's funeral, I was 39 years old and living a life I'd never imagined in either lifetime. Marcus and I had 2 kids, twin girls named Emma and Sophia. They were chaotic and wonderful with his patience and my determination, and they filled our home with laughter and noise and sticky fingerprints on every surface. I'd made partner at my firm. Marcus had published his second book. We'd bought a house with a yard and a dog and a mortgage we could actually afford. It was ordinary. It was perfect. One Saturday morning, I was in the backyard watching the girls play when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But something, maybe the same instinct that had brought me back from death, maybe just curiosity, made me pick up. Hello? Lily, it's Richard, Jessica's ex-husband. I hadn't heard from him in 7 years. What do you want, Richard? Jessica's sick. Cancer. Real cancer this time. The irony was so sharp it could cut. And? She doesn't have insurance. She can't afford treatment. Your father is trying to help, but he doesn't have much left. I thought you should know. I watched my daughters playing, chasing each other around the swing set, their laughter bright and pure. Richard, I'm sorry Jessica is sick. I genuinely am, but I can't help her. Can't or won't. Does it matter? She's your sister. She stopped being my sister a long time ago. She made her choices, I made mine. I'm not responsible for the consequences of hers. Even if the consequence is her death? Even then. He was quiet for a long moment, then, "You're really not going to help." "No, I'm really not." "I thought you were better than this." "I am better than this. That's why I'm not letting her manipulate me again. Even from a hospital bed. Especially from a hospital bed." I hung up. Marcus had come outside, heard the end of the conversation. "Everything okay?" "Jessica has cancer. They want money." "What are you going to do?" I looked at him, at our daughters, at the life we'd built together. Nothing. I'm going to do nothing, and I'm going to be okay with that. Are you okay with it? I thought about my first life, dying of cancer while my family stole from me, coming back with knowledge and power and the ability to change everything. I thought about the choices I'd made, the trap I'd set, the justice I'd gotten, the family I'd lost and the family I'd found. Yeah, I said. I really am. Because here's the truth about second chances. They're not about fixing every wrong or saving every person. They're about saving yourself. I'd saved myself. I'd built a life worth living, surrounded by people worth loving. And if that meant walking away from the people who'd hurt me, even when they were suffering, that was a price I was willing to pay. Jessica died 3 months later. I heard about it through social media, a friend of a friend who thought I'd want to know. I felt sad in that distant way you feel sad about any tragedy. A life cut short, potential never realized, someone's suffering ended. But I didn't cry. Didn't go to the funeral, didn't send flowers or call my father. I'd said my goodbyes to that family years ago. They'd made their choices, I'd made mine. And in the end, we all had to live and die with the consequences. That's how stories end sometimes. Not with dramatic confrontations or emotional reconciliations, just with distance and time and the slow, steady march of life moving forward. I'm 42 now. My girls are in second grade. Marcus's hair is going gray. Our dog is getting old. Life is good. Not perfect. Life never is. But good. Real. Mine. Sometimes I still think about that hospital room where I died the first time, about signing that power of attorney while my family circled like vultures, about the bitter knowledge that I'd given everything and gotten nothing. And then I think about this life, about the revenge I got, the justice I earned, the family I chose. I think about my daughters who will never feel obligated to set themselves on fire to keep others warm. I think about breaking the cycle. And I think, I won. Not just against Jessica, not just against my parents, but against the version of myself who accepted abuse because she thought that was what family meant. I won by becoming someone who knew better, someone who chose better, someone who built better. And if that makes me cold or hard or unforgiving in other people's eyes, well, I'm okay with that. I'd rather be cold and free than warm and trapped. I'd rather be hard and safe than soft and exploited. I'd rather be unforgiving and authentic than forgiving and false. That's my truth. That's my story. I died once, came back, and built a life worth living the second time around. Not everyone gets that chance. I didn't waste mine.